Hi everyone, my name is Zack Snipes. I'm a county extension agent for the Clemson University Cooperative Extension Service. My job is to work with the fruit and vegetable producers in the low country of South Carolina. And today we're in Stewart Point, or the Seabrook area of Beaufort County. And I get to interview one of my good friends, one of my favorite farmers, Roy Green of Simply Green Farm. We got some rain today, but I'm happy to have you here, Roy, today. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Zach. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into farming.
I'm one of 14. My mom and dad had 14 children. They were farmers. I got in farming because they farm. Back in 1940, they bought 10 acres of land for $100.
$100?
$100
for all 10 acres.
For all 10 acres.
That's a good deal.
That was an excellent deal. Mom had the money, Dad didn't, but
Right.
Mom saved up the money. She had it. And back then, when someone needed money to bury a loved one, instead of having the money, they would put up property. So they put up the property, and she had the money, and she bought the land, and the rest is history. They farm. They farm a little bit of everything: cucumbers, tomatoes, beans, squash, zucchini, and it would take it to the local market. And as a little boy, I was right there, either carrying the bucket or carrying the water or doing something.
Yep. So you grew up farming.
I grew up farming.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you've continued farming the whole time, or what happened between when you were a little boy and now?
Well, I kept on farming until I got out of school. Mm-hmm. And then I left when I graduated from high school. I left and I went to New York for about 12 years. Mm-hmm. And then I came back in 1992. And Dad had kind of stopped with farming. He had he was tired. All the kids was gone. After, farming, everybody left. Nobody wanted any parts of farming. Mm-hmm. Farming was hard. I mean, right. and the money wasn't there. So it was a better living. People went in, brothers and sisters either went in the military or they went to the city.
Yep.
And that's when I went. And I came back.
And so you guys were able to hang on to the land that we're still on today.
Yes, Mom. That was one thing Mom always saw. She was determined to keep the land. And then after the farming, then you had family members that moved in different parts of the land. We built houses here, mobile homes. Mm-hmm. So we still had the farm here in certain parts of it, but it wasn't, the whole thing wasn't farm.
Right. So then I get a call, I don't know how many years ago now, it says, hey man, I want to start farming. And so pick farming back up, I guess. And so that's when you called me. And when I walked out here, it was just a bare piece of ground. And man, we've come a long way in a few years, haven't we?
Exactly. I moved back from New York in 1992, and Dad had stopped farming. So I kind of talked Dad back into getting into farming on a limited basis. So he did it. He gave it a try. He gave us a little time to really bond together and get mm-hmm. to know. When we were small, you didn't really have time to talk to your dad. He was busy doing this and that.
Right.
So I started back, and then I had an opportunity to buy another piece of land next to our property, which is this property right here, which was 5 acres. And that's when I called you. I cleared it off and I said, Zach, I want to do something with this property. And I said, I'm thinking about growing blackberries.
Yep.
I talked to a farmer by the name of Mr. Jackie Barefoot, and he was growing blackberries. So I was intrigued, but I didn't know anything about it. So that's when I called you.
Right. And so I came out and we kind of talked about some things and looked at the land and kind of made some suggestions on, what way to orient the land and whatever, and kind of pick some varieties out. And now what's the farm doing? What are you growing here now?
I'm growing blackberries. I bought some blackberry plugs from Nurse Farms, mm-hmm. and it turned out great. Like you said, we picked out an area. We decided where the sun was going to be more sun. We decided to put it in high tunnel and outside, so that worked out great.
Yep. For our viewers that are watching that may not be familiar with a high tunnel, what's a high tunnel?
A high tunnel is various names for it. Some people call it a hoop house. Some people call it a greenhouse. It's just a sheltered area with plastic that you can get the sun in, but you can block out some of the rain. You can block out the rain, and you have some of them, they're built different. Mine has drop down sides. So you have open sides and open front and back doors.
Okay, so what's the advantage of being able to open the front doors and the sides of the greenhouse?
For ventilation, you get more air circulation. Down in the south, as you know, it gets pretty hot.
It gets very hot. Mm-hmm. So you have some blackberries growing under this high tunnel structure, and then you have some growing in the field. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences and the nuances, because there are differences between the two, correct?
Correct. In the high tunnel, you can control the weather, you can control the elements, you even control the bugs to a certain degree. So here you can, and then I have a water system. I have a drip irrigation system in the high tunnel. Outside, you get, I can I have an irrigation system outside also, but I can control the rain out there. When it rains, it rains. And then with the bugs, you get more fungus, you get more bugs outside. So,
outside than inside. So it's a protected area. It's a little more sheltered, and you can control things a little bit. So your quality is a little better on the berries, potentially.
Exactly. And from my take, the berries are a little sweeter. It's a little larger too inside the high tunnel.
Mm-hmm. Well, doesn't it get hot in this high tunnel? How do you kind of combat that, especially during the summers?
Open up the sides, pretty much. And one of them I have fans in it that kind of keep the air circulating, but I find that it really doesn't affect it that much.
Right. You also use, I see on these tunnels, a black cloth. Tell us a little bit about that and why you would use that black cloth.
That cloth is called a shade cloth. What it does, it shades 25% of the sun out. You can get various type of cloth. You can get them up to 60% shade. But I choose 25% because I don't want to block out too much of the sun because, as you know, you need the sun for the blackberries.
But it blocks out enough to where, maybe the berries aren't getting blistered by the sun. It kind of knocks down some of the UV rays and keeps a little better quality on the berries.
Exactly. And I kind of find a good niche right there with the 25%. I think that works pretty good.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about the varieties of blackberries you grow, because when I was growing up, I worked on a peach farm, and we had blackberries, and the varieties you have here aren't like the varieties I had to pick that had thorns on them and you came out all scratched up and bloody and that sort of thing. So tell us a little bit about these and why you chose these varieties.
Yeah, I did some research, and I researched a company called Nurse Farms, and they produced this variety. It's a plug, and it grows on a trellis. It grows. You put the plug in, it grows up, and it's thornless. It's called,
so you don't get scratched when you pick it.
You don't get scratched, and you don't have to bend over as far to pick them. You pick them. You put it on a trellis, and you pick them on a vine, and it grows from the cane, and it grows to the laterals, and the lateral produces a berry.
Okay, and so most blackberry varieties produce one crop a year, but these are different, and they produce how many crops a year?
So far 2, but I got my fingers crossed. I might have a 3rd crop.
So 3 crops in one season.
3 crops in one.
Yeah. So. For those viewers at home, University of Arkansas has bred some varieties in the last couple decades that actually produce blackberries twice a year. But as we're seeing in the high tunnel, Mike could get 3 crops a year out of them. So it's very encouraging for a farmer.
I think so, because with the high tunnel, you get that early picking in April. And then you get a late picking.
So you're picking blackberries in April?
Picking in April. You're starting to produce in April.
Wow. So typically when I think of blackberries, we're thinking about getting them in, May or June, but you're picking 2 months early.
Oh yeah, the customers are amazed. Where you get blackberries from this time? It's out of season. I said, not Simply Green.
Right. So under the high tunnel, they're coming in earlier, and then the field ones come in a little later. And by the time the ones in the field come in, then the second crop is being produced on the ones in the tunnel, right?
Exactly.
So you're having basically a continuous harvest from April through when?
April, the first picking only lasts about 2 to 3 weeks. And then it stops, and you prune everything out, and then you can get another harvest probably in May, June. And then it stops again. And then I'm hoping that I could get another harvest in August, September, October area.
Wow. So we were talking earlier before we started filming about the maintenance on these blackberries and how you fertilize them and water them and prune them and take care of them. Can you walk us through what that process looks like for you?
That process is a long process. A lot of pruning and tipping. Blackberry demands a lot of pruning. If you don't prune them, they can grow up to the ceiling. So you got to tip. What you call it tipping, you just tip the edges of them, and that produces the lateral, where the lateral shoots out, and that hangs on to the trellis, and you kind of tie them on the trellis. Okay,
so the tip pruning, so like we take one of these tips and pinch it, and instead of being 1, it forks out into 2, and then it's going to produce blackberries on both ends of the thing. Is that what you're saying?
Sometimes you can go 3.
Really?
It'll fork out as much as 3.
So the viewers at home should be tip pruning if they want to get increased production.
Tipping is a key. If you don't tip, you're missing out.
Right. What do you do with the old canes that have died? Because these canes grow, they live, they produce fruit, and then they die, and it's fairly obvious to see which ones are dead. How do you manage that?
I prune the old canes out and get rid of them. I don't use them for anything else. They're just old canes. Hopefully I'll find something to do with them, but right now I don't have any use for them.
Right. So that's a big task, I guess, after harvest, because you're excited about the harvest, and then there's work to do after that, correct?
Blackberry is a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot of work to prune. You prune everything out.
Right. All right, Roy, so now we're at the phase where we're harvesting these blackberries. Where are your markets? Where are you getting rid of these things?
I provide blackberries to the Gullah Co-op. I provide blackberry to the community on a U-pick basis. And I also provide blackberry at a farmer's market. That's where I'm...
The Gullah Co-op, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with them and how that process works?
They're a co-op that helps minority farmers, black farmers, and they help us with distributing our berries.
So Roy, it's been great to hear about your farm and what you're doing here, but I think you have a greater purpose than just growing blackberries and providing them to the co-op and the markets and stuff. What's the bigger purpose here?
It's just the purpose that I really take pride in is keeping the heritage, keeping the legacy alive with farming in the community. Back when I grew up, there were over 20 farmers in this area. Now I'm the only one. And keeping it going and having the produce that people can come up and still get local produce from a local farmer. And they look forward to it. I got customers calling me every day. When will your okra be ready? When will your peas be ready? So it's to keep it going and to have that pleasure and knowing that you're offering a good product,
to the people you live around.
To the people I live around.
That's right.
And they come back every year.
Yep.
And because it's less and less farmers exist now.
Yep.
In areas in our community.
And I know you're providing a service to the community in that way, but you also give back by exposing youth to agriculture. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're involved there?
Yeah, I work with the local schools. I work with the Will Branch Elementary, Middle, and High School. We have a not-for-profit organization called Heritage Community Farm where we build gardens, and the students are actively involved, and they get to go from start to finish, planting to harvesting, and they get a big thrill out of it. You should see them doing Thanksgiving when we grow collard greens and cabbage, and they get to take it home and enjoy it with their family.
Huh?
I love it because you can see the excitement on their face. They don't know about these things, but they grew up in this community, and they have very little knowledge of what this community was all about. It was all about farming.
Right, and you're also providing potentially a place for them to work. If they come through the program and they have something to do, if they're interested in farming one day.
That's right, because a lot of young people, they have different talents. And sometimes at a young age, they don't know which way to go. And if you can get them started in something that they like, maybe they'll catch on. Maybe they'll be a Zack one of these days.
Or maybe they'll be a Roy one day.
Maybe,
Well, Roy, thank you for letting us come out today and doing this interview and hearing a little bit about your history and your vision and your heart for your community and the young generation that's coming up. We appreciate you having us today.
Well, I thank you for coming out. And before you go, I have a special treat. My wife, Jackie, she makes blackberry lemonade. That's one of the ways that we use our blackberries. And you're going to love it.
All right, man. I'm pumped.